The night air was thick with the scent of pine smoke and damp earth, and a lone scream tore through the canyon, sharp and desperate. Echoing against the rock walls like a warning, Marisol crouched low behind a fallen log, her bow taut in her hands, breath held tight in her chest. At 30 years old, she had lived long enough to know danger intimately, and yet this moment brought a thrill that made her pulse race. Her dark eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the shadowed clearing before her. The jungle-like canyon surrounding her seemed alive, every branch trembling as though it were warning her of the man emerging through the mist. She could feel the weight of the forest pressing down around her, the scent of wet moss and pine sap, the distant drip of water from leaves heavy with dew, the soft scuttle of unseen animals in the undergrowth. Every sense screamed alert, but her instincts told her that this was not just another hunter or wandering prospector, it was something else. Something dangerous yet deliberate. A tall figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. His long coat, dark and dust-streaked, brushed the ground with every measured step, catching glints of moonlight on tarnished silver buttons and the faint shimmer of leather etched with intricate designs. He was muscular, yet his movements were controlled, deliberate, each step calculated. A knife dangled at his belt, its hilt worn, and a rifle slung across his back. Marisol's bowstring hummed as she drew an arrow, her knuckles whitening. The stranger paused, scanning the clearing, then lifted one hand slightly as if to reassure her. His amber eyes, piercing and wary, met hers. "I mean no harm," he said, his voice calm, yet carrying a subtle edge that betrayed the tension behind it. "Name's Taye. I'm looking for someone, my brother. Maybe you've seen him?" Marisol's gaze narrowed. "And why should I trust a man wandering Apache lands at night, armed and uninvited?" Taye's lips twitched in a faint, humorless smile. "Because if I die out here tonight, it won't just be me. You'll regret letting me go if you're clever enough to survive what's coming." The wind shifted, carrying a mournful cry from deep within the canyon. Marisol felt her pulse hammer, not from fear, but from the urgent weight of the stranger's words. Something told her he spoke the truth. She had seen signs of someone struggling through these woods-disturbed underbrush, footprints pressed into soft soil. The remnants of a campfire hastily abandoned, but had assumed it was some lost wanderer. Her bow remained trained on him as she considered her options. "Speak quickly," she said, her voice low, edged with authority. "You have little time here." Taye's eyes flicked toward the dense forest behind her, alert to every sound. "It's my brother," he said, his voice tight with suppressed anguish. "He disappeared weeks ago. If he's alive, he won't last the winter out here." Marisol's stomach twisted. The urgency in his tone tugged at something she had long buried, a fierce need to protect life when it was threatened, especially life as innocent as a brother trapped by fate. She lowered her bow, just enough to signal a tentative truce, though her hand hovered near the nock of another arrow, ready to react. "Follow me," she said abruptly, motioning to a narrow deer path winding into the shadowed trees. "One misstep, and this path won't save you from the cliffs or the river below." Taye's gaze lingered on her for a heartbeat, gratitude and caution mingling in the flickering firelight. "I don't need saving," he murmured. Though urgency propelled his steps, the jungle seemed to swallow them as they pressed deeper, the thick canopy blotting out the stars above. Every footfall on the moss-laden earth, every snap of twig beneath their boots, seemed amplified in the hush of the canyon. Fog clung to the lower ground, curling around gnarled roots and hanging in webs over fallen logs. Even the air felt alive, tense with anticipation, as though the forest itself knew they were being watched. As they advanced, Marisol noticed Taye's movements were careful, but unrefined. He had experience surviving, yet lacked the instinctive flow of someone born to this land. She kept glancing at him, noting the way his amber eyes scanned constantly, alert but not panicked. She could feel him judging her too, weighing her strength and resolve. Finally, they reached a stream, its waters rushing cold and clear over smooth stones. Marisol knelt, cupping the water in her hands and offering him a drink. "We'll rest here briefly. After that, the path narrows and the jungle grows unforgiving." Taye drank quickly, then studied her. "You've lived here long?" "All my life," she replied. "This forest has seen every secret, every betrayal. And it doesn't forgive foolishness." The night deepened around them. Somewhere in the shadows, a fox cried, and the soft rustle of wings hinted at owls circling overhead. Marisol set up a small defensive perimeter with sharpened sticks and traps she had prepared for just such an occasion. She kept her bow within reach, scanning the undergrowth constantly. Taye watched, silent and alert, learning quickly, but clearly not accustomed to such intimate knowledge of the wild dot after a few hours. They found a concealed cave Marisol had discovered years earlier, hidden by thick ferns and the sweeping roots of an ancient oak. The entrance was camouflaged, almost invisible to anyone not familiar with the jungle's subtle signs. "This is safe for now," Marisol whispered, brushing away dirt and moss to reveal the narrow opening. "Inside we can rest, but not for long. They will come looking." Taye nodded, stepping carefully inside, his eyes scanning the shadows. "You think they're close?" "Close enough that if you make a sound, they will hear," she replied. Her voice carried a quiet authority born of years of survival. She set a small fire in the center of the cave, the smoke curling toward the opening and mingling with the cold mist outside. They ate sparingly dried meat. Nuts and berries Marisol had gathered and spoke only when necessary. In the dim light of the fire, Taye finally told her what had brought him to this perilous place. "My brother, Joran," he began, voice tight with restrained emotion. "He found something in old maps showing Apache lands, deeds that were lost or hidden. Men came for him, and now he's missing. They want it. If they get it, everything my family owns will be lost." Marisol's hand twitched toward her blade. She had heard of outsiders exploiting her people, stealing land, burning villages, and leaving destruction in their wake. Yet there was something in Taye's presence that suggested he was different, an outsider fighting for a cause not his own, risking life and limb. "Maps man greed," she murmured, voice low. "I've seen it all before. We survive by being clever, not by fighting blindly." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling branches and carrying with it distant cries, perhaps predators, perhaps human threats. Marisol felt the tension knot deep in her stomach, a mixture of anticipation and fear. She studied Taye carefully, noticing the way his jaw tightened, how his eyes searched for signs of danger even as he listened. He was strong, resilient, and stubborn traits she respected, yet worried could get him killed if unchecked. Hours passed. The fire flickered low, casting long shadows against the cave walls. They sat side by side in tense silence, listening to the night. Marisol's thoughts drifted, unbidden, to the many nights she had spent alone in this cave, surviving ambushes and storms. She had trusted only herself, and yet here was a man, a stranger, who somehow seemed to belong in this perilous world. At last, she broke the silence. "Rest now. We move at dawn. If your brother is alive, he won't wait for us to catch up." Taye inclined his head, exhaustion evident in his posture. "Thank you," he whispered. Not for the first time, Marisol felt a flicker of emotion she had long suppressed. Curiosity, respect, and something more fragile, dangerous. Hope. Outside, the canyon breathed around them, alive with whispers of the past and the promise of battles yet to come. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly, thick with mist and expectation. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the jungle, Fate was stirring, setting the stage for a story that would test courage, loyalty, and the fragile thread of trust forming between an Apache woman and a man who might just be her equal. Mar ISOL single quotes S eyes, sharp and unwavering, swept the darkness one last time before sleep claimed her in short, restless bursts. Somewhere beyond the trees, danger waited. Somewhere ahead, destiny had already begun to take its shape. And in the firelight, reflecting in Taye's determined eyes, the first sparks of an unexpected bond began to glow. The night held its breath. And so did they? The forest had grown even darker in the early morning mist, the thick canopy above blotting out much of the weak sunlight. Marisol moved ahead, her steps silent but purposeful, scanning every shadow and listening to the smallest rustle in the underbrush. Taye followed closely behind, his boots crunching softly against the damp earth, his hand hovering near the hilt of his knife. The creek they had passed the previous night wound through the trees, its icy water carving paths through the moss-covered stones. "You move like a shadow," Taye said quietly, trying not to startle her. His voice carried both admiration and curiosity. "I've been in forest before, but never like this. You know every branch, every root." Marisol's lips pressed into a thin line. "I have to. This land isn't forgiving. A misstep here can be your last." She paused, her dark eyes scanning a thick tangle of ferns and vines. "Your brother. Do you know where he was taken?" Taye shook his head. "Only that the men who took him weren't ordinary. They knew the land enough to follow him, but not enough to know every secret path. He's smart, he survived the first few days, but after that, I don't know." Marisol's gaze softened, just slightly. She had seen that desperation before in other families, and it stirred a rare flicker of empathy. "Then we need to move quickly," she said, adjusting the strap of her quiver on her back. "If your brother is still alive, he won't be able to call out for help for long. The jungle will swallow him." They continued in silence, the forest pressing around them like a living entity. Mist curled around twisted tree trunks and the roots of ancient oaks, making the world seem unreal, almost enchanted. But Marisol knew better than to be lulled by beauty. There were hidden threats in every shadow. After an hour, they reached a narrow ravine where the ground dropped sharply toward a slow-moving river. Marisol knelt to inspect footprints in the soft mud, tracing them with her fingers. "They're recent," she whispered. "Your brother passed through here within the last day, maybe less. But he was in trouble. See the drag marks?" Taye crouched beside her, peering at the tracks. His jaw tightened. "They were dragging him?" "Yes," she said grimly. "And someone's been careless. The captors left signs that they didn't expect anyone to follow." She traced a path through the underbrush with her hand. "We need to take a detour. The main path will lead straight to them." The forest seemed to tense around them as they skirted the main trail, twisting through hidden paths that only someone intimately familiar with the land could navigate. Taye struggled to keep pace, stumbling once on a hidden route, and Marisol shot him a glance that was equal parts irritation and concern. "Careful," she said. "One wrong move and we're done for." He nodded, swallowing, his eyes scanning the shadows. "I'll follow your lead. Just keep me alive." Marisol gave a tight-lipped smile. "That's the plan. Keep up and don't make noise." Hours passed. The forest grew thicker, the mist colder, and the sounds of wildlife grew louder in a haunting symphony. Birds cried, insects hummed, and far off a wolf howled, the mournful sound echoing off cliffs. Marisol and Taye pressed forward, navigating slippery rocks and tangled roots, until they reached a small clearing with a fallen log spanning a shallow ravine. "This is tricky," Marisol said, examining the log. "If you slip, you'll land in the water below. Come slowly, one at a time." Taye stepped carefully, the log groaning under his weight. Halfway across, his foot slipped slightly, and he caught himself with a sharp intake of breath. Marisol's hand shot out instinctively, steadying him. "Watch your footing," she warned. He nodded, grateful, though he tried not to show it. "I trust you," he said quietly. Marisol's eyes flicked toward him, her expression unreadable. She said nothing, but something unspoken passed between them, a mutual understanding, fragile and new. On the other side of the log, the undergrowth thickened, and they moved with renewed urgency. Marisol led them down a slope that ended at a narrow stream. Water rushed over rocks, icy and fast. She crouched by the bank, drinking quickly, and offered Taye some from her cupped hands. "You've been in worse conditions than this?" she asked, breaking the silence. Taye swallowed the water, then nodded. "I've traveled deserts, mountains, forests, but never like this. Never like here." His amber eyes followed her as she examined the riverbank. "You know every secret in this forest." "I have to," Marisol said. "It's my home, and it's dangerous for anyone who doesn't understand it." They pushed on, and as the sun rose higher, the mist began to burn away, revealing the sprawling jungle in its full complexity. The air was heavy with the scent of wet earth and flowering shrubs. Birds darted through the branches, and far off, a waterfall thundered into a pool below. Marisol paused, listening. Something was off. "Stop," she whispered, raising a hand. Taye froze. Voices, there, downstream. They crouched low in the ferns, peering through the mist. Two men stood by the river, armed, laughing quietly to each other. Between them, chained to a tree, was a figure thin-bloodied, but alive. Taye's heart clenched. "Joran," he whispered. Marisol's eyes narrowed. "Stay calm. We need a plan." She scanned the surroundings. The river curved, and the bank offered concealment behind rocks and thick vines. "We can approach from here," she whispered, "but you follow my lead exactly. One false move and he's dead, or worse we are." Taye nodded, swallowing hard. The desperation in his chest burned brighter than fear. He had waited weeks for this moment, and now it had come. They moved like shadows, silent and deliberate. Marisol nocked an arrow, drawing it back to feel the tension in the string. Her eyes never left the captors. She could hear Joran's weak moans, feel the urgency. The fragile thread of hope dangling in the cold air. Marisol released the first arrow. It hissed through the air, striking one man in the shoulder. He screamed, stumbling backward. The second arrow followed, striking the other in the leg. Chaos erupted. Joran strained against his chains, and Taye sprinted forward, knife in hand. Marisol moved like a phantom through the mist, her bow releasing arrow after arrow with deadly precision. She could hear the shouts, the thud of bodies against rocks, and the sharp intake of Taye's breath as he fought alongside her. Together they were unstoppable, their movements synchronized. As if the jungle itself had trained them. In minutes, the captors lay incapacitated, groaning in the mud. Taye rushed to Joran, cutting the chains with shaking hands. "Brother, it's me." "You're safe now." Joran leaned against him, exhaustion and relief etched into his face. "Taye, I thought I'd never see you again." Marisol crouched beside them, bow still in hand. Her dark eyes swept the misty clearing, alert for any further threats. She said nothing, but her chest rose and fell rapidly, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Taye finally looked at her, amber eyes wide with gratitude. "We couldn't have done it without you." Marisol only nodded. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of the jungle." They helped Joran to his feet, and he leaned heavily on Taye. The three of them moved cautiously, deeper into the trees, leaving the incapacitated captors behind. Every step was deliberate, every sound magnified. The jungle, once a silent accomplice, seemed now a living, breathing entity that could either hide them or betray them at any moment. As they progressed, Marisol's eyes lingered on Taye. There was something about him, his determination, his skill, his willingness to risk everything for his brother, that stirred a rare sense of admiration. And despite the danger, she felt a small, unfamiliar warmth in her chest, a fragile flicker of connection. The forest closed around them again, thick and unyielding, but now they moved not just as rescuer and outsider, but as a team bound by shared purpose. The jungle whispered around them, promising more trials, more danger, but also hinting at the bond that was forming, fragile but undeniable, between an Apache woman and the man who had dared to step into her world. They did not speak for long stretches, letting the jungle sounds fill the silence, but every glance, every unspoken gesture carried meaning. And in the haze of morning mist, as they continued toward safety and the unknown challenges ahead, a quiet understanding took root. Survival alone had brought them together, but the fire between them, unspoken, fragile, real, was just beginning. The day pressed on, shadows stretching long, and the three moved deeper into the forest, unaware that the dangers they had narrowly escaped were only the beginning of what the jungle had in store. Mist hung low over the jungle floor, thick and damp, curling around gnarled roots and twisted vines. Marisol moved silently, her eyes scanning every shadow, ears attuned to the slightest disturbance. Taye followed closely, his knife gripped tightly, muscles coiled like a spring. Joran stumbled behind them, still weak from his ordeal, leaning on his brother for support. The forest was alive with soundbirds calling, insects humming, and far-off waterfalls thundered like distant drums. Marisol stopped suddenly, raising her hand. The others froze. Voices, she whispered, downstream. She lowered herself to the ground, creeping forward. Through the mist, she could make out two figures armed with rifles, pacing near the riverbank. Between them, a figure slumped against a tree, another man, possibly injured or left for dead. Taye's jaw tightened. Are they dangerous? Marisol didn't answer. She nocked an arrow, eyes never leaving the targets. Move slowly, she said, her voice barely audible. One false move and they'll see you, and your brother is still recovering. Stay low. The three of them crept forward, using fallen logs, rocks, and ferns for cover. Marisol's heart hammered in her chest, but her movements were precise, deliberate. She had survived the jungle for years, and now the stakes were higher than ever. Her mind raced with possibilities, plotting the most effective way to neutralize the threat without endangering Joran. When they were close enough, Marisol drew her first arrow and released it. It struck one of the men in the shoulder, and he howled, staggering backward. The second arrow followed, hitting the other man in the leg. Chaos erupted. Taye sprang forward, knife in hand, moving with surprising agility through the underbrush. He ducked under a branch, sidestepped a swing, and pressed toward the nearest captor. Marisol moved like a shadow through the mist, releasing arrow after arrow with deadly accuracy. The sounds of struggle filled the air, the grunt of exertion, the sharp thud of bodies hitting the ground, the hiss of arrows. Joran, recovering some strength, tried to get to his feet, but Taye intercepted him, holding him back. Stay down, he hissed. Finally, the two captors were incapacitated, groaning on the mud-streaked riverbank. Marisol crouched beside Taye, still tense, her dark eyes sweeping the misty clearing for any further threats. He's free, she said quietly. Go to him. Taye didn't hesitate. He ran to Joran, cutting the ropes that bound his wrists and ankles. Joran slumped forward, leaning heavily on Taye, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. I thought I'd never get out of here, he whispered, his voice hoarse. "You're safe now," Taye said, his arm steadying his brother. "I've got you." Marisol remained alert, her bow still in hand. She watched the jungle, sensing movement in the shadows, but nothing came. For now they were alone, the three. Of them moved carefully through the dense jungle, keeping close to the river where the mist provided cover. Marisol led the way, using hidden trails and natural camouflage to avoid detection. Taye and Joran followed, muscles tense, senses sharp. Every snapping twig or rustle of leaves made their hearts skip, but Marisol's confidence guided them. After some time, they reached a small cliff overlooking the river. The water roared below, frothing white as it crashed over rocks. Marisol motioned for them to stop. "We rest here," she said. "You'll need your strength. We're not out of danger yet. The men who took your brother, they won't give up easily. They know we're close." Taye nodded, looking out over the rushing river. "How much further to safety?" "Several miles," Marisol replied, scanning the edge of the cliff and the surrounding forest. "But we have a chance now. They won't expect us to take the high trail. It's dangerous, but it gives us cover." They settled near the cliff's edge, eating small rations and drinking from the river. Marisol kept her bow close, watching every movement in the mist. Taye, still tense, cleaned his knife and checked his rifle. Joran leaned back against a tree, finally allowing himself to rest. "I can't thank you enough," Taye said quietly, glancing at Marisol. "If you hadn't come, I don't know what would have happened." Marisol's eyes met his, dark and unreadable. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of the jungle. Survival is still the priority. The men who took your brother may still be tracking us." Taye nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand. I don't know how I would have made it without you." A long silence followed, broken only by the rush of the river below. Marisol finally spoke. "You have courage. I'll give you that. But courage without skill, it can get you killed." She studied him closely. "You're learning quickly, though." Taye gave a faint, humorless smile. "I've had good teachers." Marisol's lips curved slightly, but she didn't comment. Instead, she returned her attention to the forest, scanning the tree line, listening for movement. As the afternoon sun struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, a faint rustle caught her attention. She froze, signaling for Taye and Joran to stay still. Two figures emerged from the mist men carrying supplies, unaware of the clearing's previous battle. "They're scouting," Marisol whispered. "And they've brought reinforcements. We need to move now." She led them down a narrow slope, hidden by ferns and underbrush, twisting paths only she could navigate. Taye and Joran followed, silent, muscles coiled, every nerve on edge. The jungle seemed to close around them, the mist thickening, the sounds of wildlife amplified. As though the forest itself were watching, they reached a narrow cave tucked under a rocky outcrop. Marisol motioned for them inside. "This will hold for a few hours," she said. "Rest, regain strength. We leave before sunset." Inside the cave, Joran collapsed against the wall, finally letting exhaustion claim him. Taye knelt beside him, checking his brother for injuries. Marisol kept watch near the entrance, bow at. The ready, eyes scanning the dimly lit interior and the shadows beyond. "You've done well," Taye said quietly, turning to her. "You risked your life for us." Marisol shrugged, keeping her tone neutral. "I didn't risk anything foolishly." "You're alive because you listened." Taye studied her, noting the sharp intelligence in her dark eyes, the way her every movement was measured, deliberate. "You're remarkable," he said softly. Marisol's gaze flicked to him. "Focus on survival," she said. "There's no room for compliments here." They rested briefly, the tension of the day slowly ebbing, but the forest remained alive with hidden threats. Marisol knew their respite was temporary. The jungle did not forgive mistakes, and the men who had taken Joran were likely regrouping, hunting for their prey. As evening approached, Marisol led them out of the cave, guiding them along a hidden ridge that overlooked the river below. The mist clung to the water, rising like smoke from a fire. The men below were visible, moving cautiously, searching for signs of the trio. Marisol crouched behind a large boulder, whispering instructions. We move in 3 stages. I go first, clear the path. Taye follows, and Joran stays between us. Keep close, stay silent. We can't let them see us. Taye nodded, muscles tensed. I'm ready. The 3 of them moved through the mist, shadows among shadows, using every skill Marisol had honed over the years. They crossed rocky outcrops, slipped along narrow ledges, and finally reached a small clearing where the river bent, forming a natural barrier. They paused, catching their breath. The sounds of the forest were muted here, the rush of water masking any noise. Marisol scanned the clearing, noting the safest path across. From here, we can reach higher ground. They won't follow us here. They can't risk the river crossing. Move quickly. Taye and Joran followed her lead, carefully picking their way across the rocky terrain. The tension was palpable, every shadow a potential threat. But Marisol's confidence and skill guided them safely, each step deliberate, each movement precise. Finally, they reached a plateau above the river, the jungle stretching endlessly beyond. Marisol allowed herself a small exhale, though she kept her bow ready. Taye looked at her, gratitude and something more lingering in his amber eyes. Joran slumped against a tree, relief washing over his face. We made it, Taye whispered, barely daring to believe it. Marisol's dark eyes swept the plateau, alert. For now, she said, we're not safe yet. But we have time to plan our next move. The men who took your brother, they won't give up easily. We need to be ready. Taye nodded, his hand brushing against hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement of trust, respect, and the bond forming between them. Marisol didn't withdraw, but she didn't smile either. Words were dangerous here. Action spoke louder. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the jungle in shades of gold and crimson, the trio settled into their temporary refuge, knowing the hardest part of their journey was yet to come. The forest whispered around them, alive with secrets, danger, and the promise of trials that would test courage, loyalty, and the fragile thread of trust forming between an Apache woman and the man who had dared to step into her world. The jungle held its breath. And so did they? The first light of dawn filtered through the thick canopy, painting the jungle floor in muted gold and green. Mist curled around the roots of ancient trees, the river below murmuring its endless song. Marisol crouched on a rocky outcrop, her dark eyes scanning the tree line. Taye and Joran huddled behind her, tense but determined. The events of the past days weighed on all of them, but now the endgame was near. They're moving, Marisol whispered, nodding toward the far bank of the river. A group of men, armed and cautious, emerged from the mist. They carried ropes, machetes, and rifles, scanning the jungle for any signs of intruders. Their intent was clear. They were coming for Joran and the map he carried. Taye he gripped his knife, amber eyes narrowed. We can't outrun them. We have to face them here. Marisol's lips pressed into a thin line. She had considered escape, diversion, and hiding, but these men were relentless and well-trained. Then we do it smart, she said. We use the terrain. We set traps. We fight on our terms. Joran, still weak but recovering, glanced between the two of them. I can help. I know the jungle well enough to slow them down, give us an advantage. Marisol studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. Taye, stay close to me. Joran, follow my instructions. Every movement counts. One mistake and it's over. They moved with practiced stealth, descending toward a narrow choke point between two rocky ridges. Marisol had prepared it days before, sharpening sticks and rigging simple traps hidden pitfalls, tripwires, and loose rocks poised to send intruders tumbling. The men wouldn't expect such cunning. They relied on brute force. As the first of the intruders stepped into the trap zone, Marisol signaled with a subtle movement. Taye and Joran tensed. Then the first pitfall gave way, a man disappearing with a scream into the hidden pit. Others fell over loose rocks, stumbling, caught off guard. Chaos erupted in the narrow corridor. Marisol moved like a phantom through the mist, her bow releasing arrow after arrow with deadly precision. Taye flanked her, moving with skill and strength, incapacitating any who survived the traps. Joran followed her instructions, creating distractions and guiding the men into hidden snags and pitfalls. The air was thick with the sounds of struggle grunts, shouts, the thud of bodies, and the hiss of arrows. The river below roared like a furious beast, masking some of the noise, giving them cover. Marisol's heart pounded, but her focus never wavered. Each movement, each shot, was deliberate, calculated to maximize their advantage while minimizing risk to Joran and Taye. By mid-morning, the remaining intruders had either fled or been subdued. Marisol stood on a rocky ledge, bow lowered but muscles still tense, watching the last of them disappear into the jungle. Taye approached her, breathing heavily, his amber eyes shining with a mix of relief and admiration. "You were incredible," he said, his voice low, filled with awe. "I've never seen anyone move like that in a fight." Marisol didn't respond immediately, scanning the jungle for any lingering threat. Finally, she spoke. "We're not safe yet, but the worst is over. For now." Joran stepped forward, leaning on Taye. "I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. Both of you." Marisol's dark eyes softened slightly. "You survived because you were careful and because Taye didn't give up on you. I just guided the path." Taye shook his head. "No, you led us through the entire jungle, through traps and ambushes. You saved all of us. I owe you everything." Marisol's lips curved in the faintest of smiles, though she didn't dwell on it. There was still work to be done. "We need to move. There's a safe place not far from here. Your family will be there. You'll be out of danger." They began moving again, following hidden trails that twisted through the dense jungle. Marisol led, Taye beside her, Joran following carefully. The forest, once threatening and alive with danger, now seemed almost protective, guiding them toward safety. As the sun climbed higher, they reached a small plateau overlooking a clearing. In the distance, smoke rose from a modest camp, a family homestead hidden deep within the jungle, protected by terrain and secrecy. Marisol motioned for them to pause. "There," she whispered. "You'll be safe there, but we need to approach carefully. Make no sudden moves." Taye and Joran nodded, hearts pounding with relief. They crept toward the clearing, and as they neared, familiar voices called out. Family members rushed forward, disbelief and joy etched on their faces. Joran stumbled forward, tears streaming down his face, and was caught by his mother, who embraced him tightly. Taye followed, arms open, relief flooding through him. Marisol lingered at the edge of the clearing, her dark eyes scanning the horizon one last time. The jungle had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and now the danger was behind them. Joran's mother turned to Marisol, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saved my son. You saved my family." Marisol inclined her head. "Just doing what was necessary. He's strong now, and he has a brother who would never give up. That matters more than anything." Taye stepped closer, his amber eyes meeting hers. We wouldn't have made it without you. I don't just mean survival. I mean getting through all of it, together. You're extraordinary." Marisol's lips curved faintly, the first real smile she had shown in days. "I do what I must. That's all." For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the past days settling around them. The jungle behind them, the homestead ahead, and the bond forged through danger and shared struggle held them together in a quiet, unspoken understanding. Finally, Taye broke the silence. "Will you stay? Just for a while? Help us rebuild? I know it's your home, but I don't want to lose what we found here." Marisol's gaze drifted toward the forest, then back at Taye and Joran. The jungle had been her life, her constant challenge. But something in her heart stirred at the thought of remaining with people she had come to care for deeply. "I'll stay," she said softly. "For a while. Until you're safe. And maybe longer, if the jungle allows it." Taye's eyes softened, relief and gratitude mingling in a rare, open expression. He didn't speak, only reached out, gently clasping her hand. Marisol didn't pull away. The gesture was simple, yet it carried the weight of trust, respect, and the first spark of something more fragile, more enduring than survival alone. Joran, finally resting against his brother, looked at Marisol with awe. "I thought I'd never see you again. I can't believe we made it." Marisol's dark eyes softened. "You survived because you were brave and because Taye never gave up. That matters most. And now you're home." The sun rose higher, burning through the lingering mist, bathing the clearing in warm light. Birds sang, the river murmured far below, and the jungle seemed to exhale, as if releasing the tension that had gripped it for so long. Marisol, Taye, and Joran stood together, survivors of the jungle's trials, bound by experiences that would last a lifetime. As they moved into the safety of the homestead, Marisol took in the simple beauty of the place: wooden cabins, small fields, smoke rising from cooking fires. The family bustled with relief and activity, welcoming the rescued Joran, but they also gave her space, allowing the woman who had led them through peril to remain at the edge of their lives if she chose. Taye stayed close to her, watching her silently, the bond between them undeniable. "The jungle tested us," he said quietly, "but we came through it together. I can't imagine facing anything else without you by my side." Marisol finally allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "Then we'll face whatever comes next together," she said. It was a promise, not just of survival, but of partnership, trust, and a bond forged in the crucible of danger. The day passed slowly, the family reunited, the men who had pursued them nowhere in sight. Marisol helped guide Joran as he regained his strength, trained Taye in subtle survival techniques unique to the jungle, and shared her knowledge of the land. Each day, their bond deepened, unspoken, growing stronger in shared trust and understanding. By nightfall, the homestead was calm. Fires flickered, casting shadows over the tired but happy faces. Marisol stood at the edge of the clearing, looking toward the jungle. It had been her home, her life, her challenge, but now it felt different. With Taye and Joran beside her, she had found something unexpected, not just survival, but connection, trust, and the faintest spark of hope for a future beyond danger. Taye approached, gently taking her hand. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we face it together." Marisol met his gaze, dark eyes steady, and nodded. Together. The jungle behind them remained silent, the river murmured endlessly, and the night sky stretched above, filled with stars. The trials were over, the danger behind them, and a new chapter awaited, one built not just on survival, but on trust, respect, and the beginnings of something deeper. For the first time in a long while, Marisol allowed herself to breathe fully, to feel the warmth of companionship and the quiet strength of human connection. The jungle had tested her, Taye had proven himself, and Joran was safe. Together they faced a future filled with possibility, the shadows of the past behind them, and the promise of a life they had earned through courage, skill, and unyielding loyalty. And in the quiet of the night, with the river whispering below and stars overhead, they finally understood what survival alone could never teach, that trust, love, and the bonds forged in the fire of adversity were stronger than any danger the world could throw at them.